Greetings, everybody. I'm Mary Geddry. I run Geddry.com, and I'm behind kvzn.fm. And I also am a co-founder of Coos Commons Protection Council, a local nonprofit. And I'm very happy to introduce my co-host today, Geddry King.
Thanks for having me, Mary. I'm Geddry King. I do quite a few things in the community, but one of the things I do, I'm the chair of the Coos County Democrats. And I'm just really happy to be here with Mary to talk about issues in our community and see how we can work together and try and solve some of these, partisan extreme elements that we've seen here in the last decade or so.
Yeah.
So speaking of those extreme elements, we wanted to talk about the recent commissioners meeting in Coquille recently. The two more extreme Republican commissioners, Bob Main and Rod Taylor, jammed through a resolution, a non-binding resolution as I understand it, but a resolution nonetheless that would ban tyranny and mask mandates and a bunch of other COVID, mandates that they're worried about coming to Coos County. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So basically, they are enough. Sorry about that. They are afraid that because there's an increase in COVID hospitalizations, that the state and the Fed may implement safety measures. God forbid. And that somehow those safety measures are tyrannical and, violation of people's civil liberties. And because I guess everybody should have a right to infect their neighbor and whatever. So according to Rod Taylor, the resolution was written by him. I kind of doubt it. I suspect he did a lot of cutting and pasting from somewhere, but he says he wrote it, so okay. And there's a lot of just provably false whereas statements. I don't have it in front of me right now, and it's probably not worth anybody's effort to read it because it is toothless. It has it's unenforceable. He's trying to basically violate laws that, number one, don't exist yet, or mandates that don't exist yet. But if they do, he's saying that county rule supersedes state and federal regulations. And I'm kind of sympathetic to that concept in a way, because I feel that communities should have more say. Like a community should be able to say that industrial rules and regulations are not adequate.
Right.
Like they allow so many parts per billion, but in Coos County we allow 0 parts per billion.
Yeah. Right.
And I think that we should be able to protect ourselves to a higher standard. But in the context that they're thinking of it, it's just wearing a mask is a sign of weakness or something. I don't know. It's not a consideration for your neighbors. It's un-American or whatever it is. So the main thing though that's bad about it, and again, it's toothless. He even admitted this. Apparently, he got on a local talk radio program and admitted that it really wouldn't do anything. So it was all political theater. But what was really sneaky about it is how they got it in. So on the agenda, public meetings and so forth, the public is supposed to be noticed at least 24 hours, maybe 48, at least 24 hours in advance of any actionable items that the commission may take. And occasionally things come up where they just have to have a late agenda item. But even that, there's 24 hours. And so the public will know, they have a chance to come and say their piece or why they think it's good or bad or whatever. Then they have what's known as a late agenda item. And that's for purely emergency circumstances,
Right.
Where they literally have to do something before the next scheduled meeting. So this particular resolution did not qualify for that, even though Rod Taylor's argument was, well, these mandates could come down any minute. Well, they still haven't come down.
Right.
But it also appears that the two commissioners colluded to work this out as a late. And to get something on the agenda as a late item requires a unanimous vote of all three commissioners. And when John Sweet repeatedly asked, what is it? I want to know what it is. Maine would not tell him. And he said, well, let's get it on here and then we can talk about it. And so, John acquiesced.
Right.
I don't think he'll make that mistake again, but he did. Yeah. And then the two of them voted 2-1 to pass this toothless stunt. But it's indicative of what can go wrong when you have people of that ideology working together, even in a nonpartisan position. And I that's one of the reasons you and I have agreed to work together, is we want to get as many progressive, liberal, fact-thinking type people in these nonpartisan roles. And we're seeing a big influx of folks like Taylor, an avowed Trump supporter, with a Trump won sign in his commissioner's office.
Right.
And so forth, running for these nonpartisan races. And to me, it's pretty scary.
I couldn't agree more with you, Mary. To me, part of the problem really is that it's not even that they run on these extreme positions. It's now they're in office taking these extreme positions too. They don't back off of any of their extremism once in office. Like you said, this is a political stunt. It has no real teeth. There is no COVID mandates yet. It is just a signal to, in my opinion, the MAGA base, the Citizen Restoring Liberty crowd, that they, especially Rodney, but certainly Bob going along with it, that they are right there with them ideologically, that they're going to, go along with what they think. And I just think, the flouting government regulations, number one, that's not tyranny. And, using their words, or excuse me, what the government is doing isn't tyranny. There's no reason to be flouting them, right? They use that tyranny word, and they learned it in the 8th grade when they studied the American Revolution, and probably haven't heard it really since. And so they tie it to the American Revolution. They were fighting for political rights that were denied them. They weren't fighting because they had to wear a mask to help, as you say, your fellow man, which is another thing that's ridiculous to me. They dress all this up in the talk of God and religion, yet when it comes to simply doing something that makes others feel better or would in some way, small way, help your fellow person, they not only don't do it, they belittle it, they ridicule it. It isn't leadership, in my opinion, and it just brings that extreme nature to our county commission. I mean, I'm a Democrat, you're a Green Party, if I remember correctly, right? We're both pretty progressive, but we're not up in arms about John Sweet, who is also a Republican.
Right.
We're up in arms about Bob Maine and Rod Taylor because they're taking extreme positions.
Yeah.
Trump is under fire in many states here under the 14th Amendment. Because he incited insurrection, right? He was an enemy of the United States. And, we talked off air a little bit about how Rod Taylor, he didn't swear his oath, when
Right.
he was at the Capitol. But he
Right.
hasn't come back and disavowed that at all. In fact, he is, he salutes his efforts there.
Right.
That's the problem, is that we have people who don't believe in democracy. They call themselves patriots, but they don't believe in the fundamental things that the founding fathers were fighting for, which
Right.
is democracy and the transfer of power that was peaceful. They were awful to each other in Jefferson and Washington's day, but they still didn't have a coup when Jefferson won in the Revolution of 1800, as they called it. There was that full
Yeah.
transfer of power. And we can't do that in the year 2023 because of the positions that Rod Taylor, Bob Main, and Donald Trump take, and it infects our community. So what do you think about the 14th Amendment as it applies to these two gentlemen? Rodney being at the Capitol and still talking about how proud he is of being there, and Bob Main kind of supporting him in some of those endeavors and thoughts.
Well, I think it's my opinion, and I've got an essay I'll be posting about this shortly. It's my opinion that they could both be disqualified from running again, based on the fact that now Rod has never served in the military that I'm aware of. To my knowledge, he never swore an oath to uphold the Constitution prior to his participation in the January 6th thing. He since joined the board of CCAT, I think, and the Port Abandon, and then of course he got on the county commission, but he did that after the fact. And however, since he's sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, in my opinion, he has done something else, which the clause says, that you shall have engaged in insurrection or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. And that's a fairly nebulous aid or comfort thing. But I think an argument could be made that because he has still been a vocal supporter of, he's never denounced it, he's claimed to be proud of his participation that day. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's still contributing to Trump's campaign or one of his
legal fees, right?
Yeah, his so-called stuff. But I also feel that Bob Main could be disqualified for the same reason. Main didn't go to DC, but Main joined more or less Citizens Restoring Liberty. He would go to their Friday meetings. He did a presentation giving them campaign advice, how to get elected. To me, he's given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, because at least 14, according to news reports, at least 14 people from that group were in DC.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I think there's a lot more exploration to do. The way it works, and we've seen this now. Crew filed a lawsuit in Colorado, charging the Secretary of State of Colorado with disqualifying Trump from that particular ballot. And the way it would work here, and I wouldn't want to be Julie Brecky, our county clerk, but the way it would work here is somebody would have to do something similar, and go to her and force the courts to make a decision that she could disqualify either of them from running for office ever again, based on their undemocratic and unconstitutional actions.
Right. I think it's an interesting argument for a lot of the same reasons it's an interesting argument with Trump. I think the point really to me about it is the reason we're even having this conversation about being disqualified under the 14th Amendment is because they're taking extreme anti-democratic positions, right? Or they're aiding and helping extreme undemocratic groups in our area. Like, I disagree a lot with a lot of things Republicans do, John Sweet, for instance, and believe, right? But they aren't, some of those Republicans are not taking the positions that these two are. And that's what's hurting our county. That's what's hurting the county commission. That's what makes our politics more extreme and more partisan, because they're taking positions that, quite frankly, are unpatriotic. They say the election's stolen. Rod Taylor thinks January 6th was amazing. How do they explain the call in Georgia? How do they explain when Trump is on the phone asking for 16,000 votes? I mean, that is clear as day. If a Democrat was doing that, it would be the end of the world, as it should be. It should be if a Democrat was doing that. I don't agree with Democrats on a lot of things they do, but they are pro-democracy.
Yeah.
They are pro-democracy.
And that's basically the gist of everything that I work on. It's all about pro-democracy, so that equal rights really is equal, and so forth. And we can get into all kinds of talks about sustainability and stuff at some point in the future. But I don't see. I personally view Taylor and Maine as a serious threat to democracy, and I think that they've both forfeited any right to hold public office ever again. So now the question is, can we test that? The next election cycle. And I'm going to work towards giving it a try.
Sure. I think there's a lot of people in our community who are very interested in that and would absolutely agree with you. The next Board of Commissioners meeting is the 19th at 9:30, I do believe, Tuesday the 19th. We at the Democrats are encouraging people. I know it's at 9:30. It's a terrible time. I work, I can't make it to the meeting, but if you can, the 19th at 9:30, go make public comment if you're able to. Sometimes they might shut it down. Who knows what those county commissioners will do, right? They don't often want to hear criticism, I've found, but go and try and make public comment about it and let them know that they're not getting away with it, right? This is one of the reasons we're doing this, is because we want to let them know that we disagree. We don't think what they did was right. Not only do we think the resolution is bullcrap, but the manner in which they did it is completely, it's antithetical to the way government should run, especially if we want it to be participatory, right? If you're going to have something like that on the agenda, if you're going to do it, okay, that's one thing, but let us come and disagree with you, and don't do it secretively, so only the people who happen to show up that day can do it. And I think that's the problem. And they want to have their people come and participate. You go to the Coos Bay City Council sometime, and they got people from Bandon coming in and talking. They want their people to have a voice, but they don't want our side to have a voice or dissent against their policies.
And apparently at least one of the people in that audience claimed, if I heard it correctly, to have read the resolution, and he thought it was a really good resolution. Well, how come he got a chance to read it and nobody else did?
Sure. Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So we've been kind of hovering around this about democracy in action. Why don't you talk about a little bit more about the purpose of this podcast, why we're working together, and then I can talk maybe a little bit about some of the things that Democrats are doing to further our goals about democracy.
So we're trying to basically educate people. There's a lot of name calling that goes on, like you're a socialist or you're a Marxist or you're whatever, but people really don't even know what those words mean half the time, and
especially when they hear them on Fox News,
or a local radio show.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so the purpose of this podcast is to give people tools to make informed decisions and ask informed questions. And I'm not implying by any stretch that I have all the answers.
I certainly don't.
But I do know that this kind of one size fits all authoritarian thing that, this Trumpian MAGA deal is definitely not democratic, and it's dangerous. And we've got plenty of evidence and history. So
Right.
what we're hoping to do is to bring people like yourself and myself and our groups together to recognize that, I may not be a Democrat, but I'm pro-democracy. And you may not be a Green Party, but you're pro-democracy. And it doesn't have to be political groups. There's the LGBTQ plus community, people that are being demonized right now because it's convenient to help, immigrants and so on and so forth. That there's people that we need to coalesce, even though we have differing views on certain aspects. We can agree that everybody's entitled to equal rights and so forth, and that the way things have been going, it isn't really working. And so it's worth having a dialogue about how what would sustainability look like in Coos County.
Right.
Let's all get together and talk about it and see, because it's going to look different here than it's going to look in Curry County or Douglas.
Right.
It's not going to be the same.
Nope.
And so we need to look at all those dynamics. And so I'm very grateful that you're here. Number one, you're a lot younger than me. And some of us crusty old activists need a little boost here and there. But I personally feel that if we can engage the youth, because we've really left them a mess, and if we can work with them and help correct some of it before I'm gone, then that's where I want to go. So.
Yeah, I was really happy to be in touch with you. I'd heard a lot about you. I've been involved with the Democrats for maybe 3 or 4 years before we actually got in touch. And I just recognize that people such as yourself and the various groups that we have in this community all do share that vision of equal rights and pro-democracy. We might have different ways to get to economic growth in our area and environmental stability and all those different issues, but we can agree on two of the most fundamental issues: equal rights and our democracy. And, if the threats to our community weren't against those two things, it might not be as imperative that we work together, although I would disagree with that. I would still want to work together, but wouldn't have the urgency that we have now, because, God forbid Trump win in 2024. But if he does, we will feel that ripple effect. We've already felt his ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
And I just think that getting our different ideologies, getting our groups together and working to out some of these extreme elements is worth all of our while. If we want to get equal rights, if we want to get movement on environment, we have to get progressive people in there. And that might be a long way down, because we first probably have to get someone moderate in there. And to do that, we have to get the Republicans who are extreme out. And that's where we're at right now, is getting the extreme Republicans out. And so the Democrats, we're actively engaging in the elections. This past cycle, we endorsed school board candidates, because even at that level, Mary, the right, extreme right, is funding them. The Right to Life. I can't ever think of the group, but a conservative right-wing education council endorsed the candidates, the conservative candidates who won in North Bend. Democrat, I had a message from Facebook one time asking, well, who's funding the Democrats? No one. There is no one funding the Democratic candidates except the Democratic Party, and that is all community money. right? That is all fundraised from people in our community.
Right.
So that is one way we are trying to help prevent extremism, is getting involved in these local elections. We're also running the neighborhood leadership program, which is contacting your neighbors and getting them out to vote, registering them to vote, telling them it's time. For any of you listening who that's interesting, you should know that if you contact a voter face to face, 90% of the time they'll vote. Now, they might not always vote exactly how you want them to, but they will vote nonetheless if you contact them face to face. So it's a really powerful tool. We didn't win. We won 1 out of 3 elections in the school board race in North Bend, but we were really close on the other ones, a couple hundred votes. And if we continue building this momentum, if we combine our forces, we think we can make a difference. And that's going to come up in 2024, right in May. We're going to have the commissioner's race, and we're not exactly sure who's going to be running in it, but just some people listening, they probably know, but might not realize how close it was. If Melissa Cribbins would have got 60 more votes in the May election,
it would have been over. Yeah,
would have been over. Rodney Taylor wouldn't even be in the county commissioner race in November of that year, and then she lost by 160 votes, or roughly thereabouts.
170.
Yeah, in the general. So again, these margins are so small. If we can harness the power of these groups that we've been talking about here, I don't see there's any reason we can't win some of these elections.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and part of this conversation is to get people engaged, and people who might not otherwise be thinking about holding a political office, but it's because of a certain I don't know if lethargy is the right word, but lack of enthusiasm or something. But we just can't. The right is pushing people to do these nonpartisan things for the exact same reason that we need to be doing it as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah. The thing that really got me fired up about this, I don't know if you or anyone else watches Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, but he did this kind of mini segment on precinct committee people, which are just the lowest rung of party politics, right? But he was talking about how Republicans were strategically filling these offices with, they were targeting them. And it was like, wow, if they're going to do that when it does matter, they're going to have all the levers of power. And we've seen that, in these, not necessarily at the PCP level. I'm not sure how many Republicans in Coos County are PCPs, but on these boards, like Rod Taylor started on the Port Abandoned. He started on the Transportation Committee, right? And we, there's a gentleman on CCAT right now. His name's Fred Baker. He's pretty conservative. He ran against Shira Nelson in this last election, right? So they are strategically trying to put people on these positions, and we need to run candidates. You're right. Absolutely. We need to find people to run for these positions, and just anyone ever listening, you can do it. These people who are on the boards now are not qualified. They didn't go to school to do these things. They weren't really trained to do them. Some of them really should not be, but it's an elected position. You can do it. And if you're willing to learn, you'll do better than most people do on boards, quite frankly.
Right.
And so, we need people to fill those positions to run, but we also need people to vote. That's the biggest thing, and vote in these off-year elections, because 2024, we got Biden, we got Val Hoyle, and we've got the county commission. We also have city council. 2025, we have school boards and transportation boards and the community college, and so all these lower level things are really, really important, and it's the races we can impact.
Yes, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And actually, that's kind of the whole premise behind, not premise, but just one of the strategies that the Green Party employs everywhere. Right. And it's not to be they're not anti-democrats, it's just that they recognize that you've got to get people engaged, and so forth. And so far, the right's done a much better job of rallying folks. One of the things I really want to point out here is that what's most disconcerting about this alliance, this apparent alliance between Bob Main and Rod Taylor is that they value loyalty over competence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for example, they were trying to fill David Brock Smith's position when he moved up to take over Dallas Hurd's Senate seat. And Taylor voted, tried to get Denissa Raines to that position. Now, she contributed quite a bit to his campaign, and she's certainly in there. She's a CRO person, but she's not qualified to be a representative of a district.
Yeah.
No matter whether it's predominantly conservative, she's no more qualified than he is to be a commissioner. You know?
Right.
And so that's the other big concern, is that then if they start getting, choosing loyalty over competence, then the whole system starts to fail, and we'll see it in numerous ways. And so far, I think the county's kind of holding up, because there is luckily a certain separation, because we do have an elected clerk, and we do have an elected DA and an elected sheriff, and and so forth. But I could see where it could become really problematic, especially in Taylor's case, because he has completely unrealistic goals for how to finance the county. It's like,
well, yeah, he's unrealistic about how to finance things, and the county is not in a position to lose money. Like, they're going to need a levy on the 2024 ballot. And if it doesn't pass, the county's going to be in dire straits. And that's another thing that's really frustrating to me about this COVID stuff, is I've had conversations about, the county, everybody, Democrats and Republicans, needing to vote for the levy if the county is going to be financially solvent.
Yeah. You're talking about the sheriff's department, you mean? Or are you?
I'm not not the sheriff. I believe the county is going to try and pass a levy to fund the county in some way. I'm not exactly sure on the specifics, but here's what I do. I talked to one of the county commissioners. They were talking to me about how in the 2024 ballot, there will be a levy, and it will go to fund the county because the county is having trouble financially.
Well, the county is definitely in dire straits.
Yeah.
But, and I don't want to get too far off topic here. But one of the reasons the county is in dire straits is Coos County is 1 million square acres. 667,000 of those are large tract timber, which is taxed at a minimal rate. It's not even locally owned. It's owned by Wall Street hedge funds and real estate investment trusts, and they did away with a severance tax, I think, and the harvest tax. I get those two confused now, but we're in dire straits because legislators have agreed to give these giant benefits to people that don't live here, and don't invest here, and we're basically just a tree farm, and that's one of the reasons that we're hurting. So that's not something that can be solved at the county commission level. But if county commissioners got together and really pressured the legislature, we might be able to affect some change.
Would that be an example of Democrats betraying some of their values for a buck?
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of their, like I said, I'm the chair of the Democrats. I'm a pretty die-in-the-wool Democrat, but I'm not
blind.
That's right. There you go. That's exactly right. And quite frankly, my involvement, I got involved in February of 2021. you tell me what had just happened. So of why I got involved with the Democrats, right?
Yeah.
Or got more involved at the very least.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe we could end here with a little, not a debate, but maybe we could take two different sides of the coin in this shipping container port.
Yeah.
All the Democrats, which I can take their side now. I just want everyone to know it's not necessarily my position, right? But the Democrats have all come out in favor of it, right? Both past and present. So Val Hoyle, Merkley, and Wyden have all come out for it in a varying degree. And then, of course, our own local former Democratic representatives, Caddy McEwen and Arnie Roblin, have also for it. Of course, Caddy is working for North Point Development, which is the private company that is working to bring the port here. So. Right. The arguments that they will make is like it's going to bring jobs and it's going to boost the economy from the spotted owl. And, one argument that I've heard that resonates with me a little bit is that Coos County is in the bottom of poverty, mental health, suicide, drug abuse in our state. It's in the lower levels. We need something to fix those issues. And I hear a lot that it's going to be tourism or whatever else. And it just doesn't seem like tourism is going to fix those issues. So what do you say to that? And what's your position on the port? Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's the county or the local development groups, the CCD or whatever they're called, the port, to be a port. The port actually, if you look under ORS 777, I think, their job now, they don't do port things, like they don't like open the gates or flag ships through or anything.
Sure.
Their whole raison d'etre is to be economic development.
Right.
And so if they don't have a project going, then they don't get funded. And so they have to be pushing something. So but again, it's always looking to some corporate white knight that we want to bring in, and they're gonna save us. And the reason that we're in this mess in the first place is because corporate black knights came in and were literally a sacrifice zone. It's not a secret that most resource-rich areas are some of the most economically depressed areas as well. Mm-hmm. So we definitely meet that. We are a sacrifice zone.
Right.
The area was logged in an unsustainable fashion. And if you want to look at sustainability, providing for the needs of the present without stealing from future generations, well, past generations stole from the current generation. Mm-hmm. And so so again, rather than just trying to be sustainable, trying to match or balance our trade input with our trade output, which is really hard to do around here for a number of reasons. Right. But we're looking for another hero. So, they thought it was going to be the Oregon, the hexavalent chromium, the chromium mine,
Okay, I don't even know about that one.
Yeah, well, that giant tall building down down near Fred Meyer.
Okay.
That big ugly tall thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they put in all these like enterprise zones and tax things and so forth. But more than once, several over the last few years, big port developers have come in and done feasibility studies for the area. And there's a number of reasons why they won't develop here. One, the wind. So if you're loading containers up in the air and you've got 24-mile-an-hour winds, it's not really very feasible. The other is that the port would have to be deepened, and in deepening the port, You are stirring up all of the toxic sediment that industry has slewed there over the years. It's kind of settled, and that would be an issue. Not that the ports care about that, or the port developers care about that, but then the other is that there's no way to get product. We don't have a river that we can navigate all the way to the I-5 corridor. We don't have a highway, a multi-lane highway.
So the counter is the grant. I know the answer to this one. It's the rail system. They would upgrade the rail system, and there were some things they would have to do, but that would be what the grant would be going for, as partly the.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You mean it might go from 10 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour?
So the idea, that I've heard is that it would be feasible enough to ship the containers to Albany, where they have the new a facility that is not being used but can hold all of this capacity, and then it would be rerouted from there, and it would be jobs in both Lane, Douglas, Coos County is what they would say as your how would we get it to I-5?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they've got, I mean, maybe they've got a new beaming system, where they can just beam it up and whatever. Yeah. I'm not going to spend a lot of time poo-pooing that.
Sure.
But
there's a lot of other issues
we can work on.
Yeah.
But again, instead of trying to be a sustainable county, where like our biggest import really is energy, and until we can normalize, so we import electricity, fuel, all of that's imported, and all that money that's spent on that is exported, and it's not reinvested locally. So we have an enormous trade imbalance. So we need to figure out ways to be self-sustaining and sustainable, and we're not having that dialogue. A few years ago, the American Institute of Architects came down and did an assessment. It was called the Sustainable Design Assessment Team. It's called the SDAT report. And they talked literally, that this area could be sustainable, but they didn't have an answer. They didn't say, like, you need to do this and this and this. But what they did say, and there was a huge amount of community buy-in. Really, people were all eager to, let's start talking about this. And it was really the local oligarchs, including friends of Caddy McEwen and so forth, that kind of put the kibosh on that. And it's unfortunate because we do have to have those conversations because we're still waiting for somebody. The thing about these corporate white knights is that the profits don't stay here. They don't. So we're not reinvesting in our own infrastructure. We're not reinvesting in our own jobs. And
do you think there's a way, you talk about sustainability, right, and bringing these dollars to our community? Do you feel there's a way that we can create the jobs that are at least promised by this port container, the money that, not all of it would stay here, but it would certainly, here's the problem for me, is that, like, a teacher and a nurse are basically some of the only union jobs we have left in this area, right? And labor is such a huge deal to the Democratic Party, and I think it should just be a cause of we don't want the oligarchs to win. We don't want the corporations to win, right? I'm for the strikers on strike right now, in Hollywood, right? And we don't, the middle class has been gutted across this country because of our lack of unions. Because, we don't have as much union, we're not strong anymore. And so corporations can take advantage of us. I would like to see some more union jobs in our community. Is there a way that we can marry those two ideas? Union jobs and sustainability.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that that's true. but we have to start having the conversation about how to make that work.
Mhm.
You know, I've talked about this on a previous podcast. There's a corporation called the Mondragon Corporation,
Okay.
and it's in Europe, and it started in the Basque region of Spain in the mid 1950s.
Okay.
It was extremely poor after the war. It was started by Father Arizmendi, and it is now like the 7th or 10th largest corporation in Europe. And what it is basically, it's a worker self-directed enterprise. So the workers own the business.
Mm-hmm.
They reinvest. You know, no worker makes more than I think it's gone up, but I think it's like 8 times the lowest paid person.
Okay.
You invest, you buy into the corporation. If you don't have the money to do that, the corporation will loan you the money and you can work it out.
Mm-hmm.
But by keeping the wages fair and steady,
Mm-hmm.
and reinvesting back into it, they've actually grown this, and they sell everything from software to, you know, appliance parts to, you know, it's a very it's like a co-op really. They've grown to the point where they provide health insurance. They have schools. You know, I mean, it's a very, and the only people allowed on the board have to be employees. So when you think like, you know, would if Blankenship, who was the CEO of the mining company, if he was the one down there in the cave, would he have made the same decisions?
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you know,
Totally.
that let 27 people die.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah.
And but the other side of it is then the real issue here, and there's similar examples. There was a CEO down in the Bay Area, T.J. Rogers, I think his name was, and he had this belief. I think the lowest paid person in his company made $160,000 a year. This was 20 years ago, and that was a receptionist. He just believed, and there's that kid up in Washington State who's got the same philosophy.
Right.
You pay your people.
Yeah.
And then those people have money to spend where they live.
Right.
And you spend where they live. And,
yeah, and you know, if it's anything like old Ford back in the day, they spend the money at the company even more.
Yeah,
They have more money to spend at your company. You know, Ford.
He felt that he had to pay them at least enough so that they could afford to buy a car.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I teach my yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty much, you know, and we just have to look at. By the way, there's examples of Mondragon in the U.S. in the Bay Area, and this was started just before the housing crisis. They started the Arizmendi Bakery.
Okay.
And it grew. There's like, you know, I don't know how many of them there are now, but it actually grew during the housing crisis. They went from 1 to 8 stores, and they all have that model. Everybody who worked there was an owner.
Yeah.
And they paid themselves well, and they, you know, and what they didn't pay themselves went back into the business, and they were able to grow in a time of severe economic upheaval.
Yeah.
And so there's solutions. We just talk about them.
That's wrapping up here. That's one of the things that always has kind of surprised me about, I guess people just don't really understand the United States and their history and everything. Like, this is an experiment, right? And it's been an experiment since its very founding. Thomas Jefferson, you know, crazy ideas that he had sometimes was like, the reel of revolution should be every 12 and 15 years because, we're changing the government and we're experimenting with new ideas. And I think you're exactly right. Like these non-traditional, different ways of thinking might be the solutions to some of the biggest quagmires and problems we're in, but we got to try it out, and it might not work. But obviously what we're doing both in our community and on a national level, even on a state, especially on a state level, it isn't working either. That's exactly right. And just to kind of tie this all back into what we're working on here is the only way you're going to change it, if you want to change it, is by participating. That's by going to the meetings and educating yourself, by running for office, by letting your voice be heard at the county commissioners meeting at the 19th at 9:30 in Coquille, right? This Thursday at Coney Station in Coos Bay at 5:30, the Democrats are having a Thirsty Thursday. You can come and learn more about our stuff there. There's lots of opportunities to get engaged in the community if you seek them out, and contacting Mary or myself, that's a great way to find out a lot of what's going on, because we keep our fingers on the pulse of the community.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we have spoken for 50 minutes and I think we've done pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I think we can wrap it up here. I want to thank you ever so much. I enjoyed this very, very much.
Me as well.
And let's do it again.
We'll have to, absolutely.
And we'll figure out a schedule. And when we have that schedule very soon, we'll let everybody know.
Sure.
Okay.
Are you going to edit this one and put it out, or are we just practicing here? Or